wouldn't have done anything against today's, because it wasn't a missile attack from outside of the country. It was, as you say, Mike, people walked into the country free as you like, and have committed this act that we think may have killed 10,000 people.
For decades, America has been asking people to come to its shores to build the country up, because America knew that without a growing population, you couldn't build a great economic state, and that's what they have built after half a century or more, no, nearly a century of immigration policies. You know as well as I do, you go to America, some people who look Caucasian and white have the most extraordinary surnames because their roots are in Russia or Germany, somewhere in Europe, somewhere in South America, or maybe even further apart, maybe even from Russia, maybe even from Southeast Asia. And these are the people who have clubbed together and built America as the mighty financial and military power it is today, the world's only superpower, and yet brought to its knees today by a handful, probably was only a handful, of fanatics who've inflicted the most terrible damage on that land of the free, home of the brave.
Well, of course, after the Oklahoma bombing, it took weeks to recover all the bodies, and it's going to take that again with the size, the 110 floors of the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center. And it's going to emerge, obviously, that there are going to be Brits involved in this, because there'll be British people working there in the finance houses. There'll be some of the most powerful financiers from the world. The chaos, not just from the amount of deaths and from the problem that it's now going to cause with all kinds of travel around the world, but for the financial situation for the world as well. They've created the kind of chaos that they were looking for.
They certainly have, although the New York Stock Exchange is a separate building from the Twin Towers, and we believe that that's still intact. The number of investment houses that occupy the World Trade Center are countless. I mean, one investment house alone, I'm not sure which one it is, I think it was either Merrill Lynch or Goldman Sachs, one of those very big ones. Anyway, they occupied 50 floors of the World Trade Center. Just imagine the amount of financial trading that was done in that building on a day-by-day basis. You're talking about tens of billions of pounds of investment, of trading, of sureties, name it what you want, bonds, changing hands every day. That is literally the engine room of the world economy. And the engine room of the world economy has suddenly had a couple of its pistons blown out, and it's going to be working on a very, very part-time basis for many weeks, if not months to come, because you know as well as I do, John, in this day and age, the whole world is ruled by computers. When those computers go down, the system collapses. It's going to be an absolute nightmare for all the markets in the world. Stock markets will be massively depressed. I don't know for how long, but certainly on the back of this, because, of course, the implications about the economic well-being of the Western world and the repercussions that the terrorist attack will have on the economic viability of the Western world are enormous.
Now, let me just remind you that United Airlines Flight 175 Boston to LA is still reported as missing. Now, there is one possibility, is that the authorities do know where it is, and they're refusing to acknowledge it to the media for whatever reasons. I'm sure there will be the right reasons, and let's hope that that plane comes to no further harm. It's been one of the worst days ever in the history of the world for those of us who weren't around during times of war. You're just not used to seeing images of buildings collapsing, of people walking out covered head to foot in rubble, and of bodies lying inside areas which have been devastated by terrorist bombs. James Whale has joined us now on Talksport early, but that, of course, just reflecting the magnitude of what's happened today. Well, James, I guess you were probably watching all this at home on the TV when you saw it happen. It just turns your stomach.
Well, yeah, I think the main thing that I had difficulty with was remembering that this is real life and not a movie, because I was actually working on no, I know you won't believe it, but I was actually working about tonight's program. Somebody rang and said, have you seen what's happened? And I actually hadn't. And I turned on Sky News, and then I turned on the radio just to see what was going on here, and I was astounded. The sheer magnitude of what has happened today. One of the biggest problems, of course, we have with reality now is that we've seen this sort of thing in the movies. We've seen this sort of thing going on before, and as somebody said, I thought it was a scene from Towering Inferno or some kind of...
Independence Day.
Exactly. But no, this is reality. And somebody else, I heard earlier say that, well, I'm just surprised it hasn't happened already. Why hasn't this sort of thing ever happened before? Well, I'm glad it hasn't, but who knows? I mean, the aftermath of everything that we have seen, I think it's still difficult for people to actually comprehend and take in what has happened. For many, many people who have been to New York on their shopping trips and their holidays and things like that, they will know the area. They will know that it's not a huge area where these two towers are, that there are lots of little shops and news agents and little cafes all dotted around the bottom of these two towers. People will have been wandering around having their coffee on the way to work, as Americans do, and they will have presumably imagined the end of the world, and for some of them the end of their world did arrive. I don't know, it makes you speechless, doesn't it? The first thought is for people to blame somebody, that somebody needs to be hit hard. People have spoken about Pearl Harbor. Of course, the aftermath of Pearl Harbor was the first ever nuclear attack, only nuclear attack, on this planet. If it is considered to be a particular country that has hidden the people who are responsible for this, what will the Americans do? But then there's a positive side as well that you have to remember, that maybe things now can get no worse. Let's remember that this world has been infested with terrorist attacks near and far. Countries at war, probably more countries at war now on this planet than at any time in recent history. Perhaps this is the catalyst that'll make people sort of realize that there are two paths. One path we can all live in harmony, the other where we can just blow up the entire world, and that may happen if people aren't very clever. I don't know. Maybe this will make people realize that there's nobody going to gain from this. No one at all. Interesting to see how many people are denying that it had anything to do with them. Sad to see one of the reports of Palestinian children jumping up and down, egged on by their parents and celebrating. I don't blame them for it, because I don't think they know what they're doing, and I don't think that they're actually in a position to make a judgment, nor probably are their parents, who are living in what's hardly more than a mud hut. But you know, it's going to change the face of the world forever. People, I don't think, realize that at this particular moment, but from today, the world will never be the same.
September the 11th, 2001, James, I totally agree with you, is the day the world changed in our lifetimes.
Well, the Bush family's been moved to a secret and secure location. You'll have all the breaking news from the United States of America and all the latest on what's happened today. Terrible events that really have, as James says, changed the world. James will be with you all night here on Talksport. Right now, let's go to the Sky News Centre and get the latest from Martin Smedley.
Thanks, John. There's been an incredible and devastating wave of terrorist attacks across the United States. 2 hijacked planes crashed into and then destroyed the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York. There could have been around 20,000 people inside the buildings. A third plane hit the Pentagon in Washington, and a commercial plane went down near Pittsburgh. Early death toll estimates are at around 10,000. American fighter aircraft are patrolling the skies. The loss of life has been described as tremendous. Now, John Scott of Fox News in New York was on the air describing the smoke pouring from the first tower when the second plane flew straight into the center of the second building.
We just saw on live television as a second plane flew into the second tower of the World Trade Center. Now, given what has been going on around the world, some of the key suspects come to mind: Osama bin Laden. Who knows what?
New York's Mayor Rudolph Giuliani's advised people to leave the lower part of the city. Much of the subway system has been shut down. Traffic's being allowed to leave Manhattan, but not to come in. Governor of New York, George Pataki, has just been speaking about the crisis.
This is a vicious attack upon New York. It's an attack upon America. It's an attack upon the whole concept of freedom and our way of life. And we cannot let these attacks succeed. The first step has to be to make sure we do everything in our power to protect the people and to save the lives of those whose lives are still at risk, and to help those who have been injured.
Now, here's what we know about the hijacked planes. The 2 that hit the World Trade Center are reportedly both American Airlines jets. One a Boeing 767, which was en route from Boston to Los Angeles with 92 people on board, and a Boeing 757, which was flying from Washington to Los Angeles, carrying around 64 people. It's known a United Airlines 757, flying from Newark to San Francisco, with around 38 passengers, 2 pilots and 5 attendants on board, crashed in Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. And another United Airlines 767 with 65 people on board was lost. The airline hasn't said where that crashed, but we're still not sure what the plane that hit the Pentagon is. Here, the Queen has expressed her growing disbelief and shock. In a message to President Bush, she expressed heartfelt sympathy and said her thoughts and prayers were with the Americans. Tony Blair's described the outrage as the most terrible, shocking event. The Tory party has postponed tomorrow's planned declaration of the result in its leadership election in respect of the loss of life in the tragedy. Security has been tightened at London's 3 main airports and flights to the States have been cancelled. Now, British military forces have also stepped up their efforts at security bases across the country. Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon has been meeting Tony Blair to decide how to react to the terror in America.
We have stepped up security at airports to the highest levels. No flights will take off from the United Kingdom for which we cannot apply the highest standards of security for aircrew and passengers. Private flights have been stopped except where specifically authorised. Flight paths into London have been changed so there will be no civil overflights of central London. Security has been increased across the full range of government buildings and military premises. The police across the whole of the UK are on full alert. All our defence facilities round the world have been moved to high alert to ensure the protection of British service personnel.
A plane carrying Prince Andrew to the United States had to turn around in mid-air. He was due to fly to Atlanta and then to New York. And the Duchess of York was intending to head across New York to the World Trade Center today. She hadn't set off before when it was destroyed. Her charity, Chances for Children, has an office in one of the towers. And there was a minute's silence before tonight's Champions League fixtures as a mark of respect to those who died. Liverpool were playing Boa Vista at Anfield and Arsenal are in Spain to play Real Mallorca. Finally, there's an emergency telephone number set up by the Foreign Office for anyone worried about relatives who may be in America. That number is 0207 008 0000. I'll read that again. It's 0207 008 0000. And just to recap on the main story of the day, really, 2 hijacked planes have crashed.
Outside invasion and probably inside invasion has now been put into place. Major cities, the capital city here in London, now has no aeroplanes flying over it. I stopped briefly as I drove in to the studios this evening and stood on one of the bridges across the river. Normally there's a lot of noise from aircraft flying over London. There's a sort of eerie silence. The roads are quite quiet as well. Earlier today I was at Canary Wharf. The tower at Canary Wharf, nowhere near the size of the towers in Manhattan, but still a similar focal point in this country. For safety's sake, they were evacuated and gridlock ensued around that particular area. Who is responsible? Who knows? What they hope to gain out of it? Who knows? We can only surmise. But one thing is for sure, everybody feels affronted that I have spoken to. Although I have seen a few rather sorry, sad people cheering in certain depressed countries, I don't think anybody in their right mind can surely think this has been a good thing. Even the most vehement critics of America and capitalism, and the ones